I'm super excited for our next session about customer communities. And you told us you wanted to have a session about what communities really mean and where they're going. We figured that there was no better source to go to than Scott Wilder, because he is the mastermind behind some of the best known communities in the tech world. And so without further ado, let me introduce Scott.
Thank you very much. Anyway, my name is Scott Wilder, and today we're going to be talking about what does community mean and what type of community engagement, what kind of customer engagement is beneficial. So I'm going to introduce myself last. We have a great panel here. I'm going to be calling on the people who are going to be on the panel. We're going to work this a little bit differently than normal. We have 2 or 3 points we're going to highlight. I'll be asking the questions, but then also I want to give all of you a chance to ask us questions. I will be like an outfielder and field those questions and then calling to the team to answer those questions at the right time. But without further ado, let me first introduce Bill Johnson. Bill, do you want to introduce yourself?
As soon as I unmute myself. Hey, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. So happy to be here. I am the CEO and founder of Structure 3C, which is a consultancy focused on helping brands build strong and thriving customer communities. And to underscore the previous point about Scott, who is a master of community, Scott was actually an early mentor of mine and helped me think through communities at Autodesk and Dell and many subsequent adventures. So very thrilled to be here and thrilled to be on the panel with such esteemed colleagues.
Great, thank you very much, Bill. With that, I want to introduce Barbara Thomas, AKA BT. Barbara.
Well, I was just about to say that. Everybody call me BT. I'm Barbara Thomas, a published author of the book called Advocate Marketing. It's published by Pearson, and I am the Senior Customer Advocacy Strategist at Yesler. It's a part of Accenture Interactive. Thank you so much, Scott, for inviting me here to speak with Rebecca and Bill about this topic of community. I greatly appreciate it. And I can't wait to share my personal opinions on the key questions and topics.
Great, welcome aboard. And next, Rebecca Salem.
Rebecca, you're muted.
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, Rebecca Salem. I'm Marketing Communications Manager at Achieve 3000. We sell education technology solutions for students in preschool through high school. I've been working with SLAP 5 for about 2 years now, I think, in the development of our community, the Achieve 3000 Pro Educators, and very excited to be here today with Barbara and Scott and Bill and have an interesting conversation with all of you.
Great, okay, thank you, welcome aboard. So the way I describe, I should introduce myself. So Scott Wilder, I work at HubSpot, where I handle customer engagement, which involves user groups, advocacy, etc., and online communities. I would tell you about the first community I was on, but that would show my age. So with that, as I explained earlier, we have a set of points we're going to talk about here, but feel free to add questions in the chat box and I will be monitoring that. So the first question I have for the panel here today is, what does community really mean? And what type of community engagement is beneficial to your customers and to your company? And with that, we'll start with Rebecca. She's muted.
Rebecca, you're on mute.
Sorry, guys.
No
I hit the space bar, I promise. So as I mentioned, our community at Achieve 3000 is a group of our most engaged teachers, and we call it the Achieve 3000 Pro Educators, which stands for professional, resourceful, and outstanding. So for us, community really means support, especially right now for teachers. They are one of the most stressed groups of people, recent research has shown. So we really look to just raise awareness about the profession, at least within our community. And the most helpful kind of support we found is to share ideas via interactive online learning exchanges. So every 2 to 3 months, we'll host a small exclusive webinar for our Achieve 3000 pros focused on a different topic related to classroom instruction. Of course, the sharing of classroom success via SLAP 5. We've had pro educators really enthusiastically embrace the tool for recording videos of themselves, different parts of their classrooms, activities, and share all the great things that they do to help keep kids engaged and motivated in learning. And then finally, we also share resources, including our SLAP 5 boards, via our community forum, as well as our Facebook group page. And finally, the last way that we create community and support our teachers is by hosting an annual award, the Pro Educator Innovation Award, which comes with a variety of perks and benefits, and build that into our public relations. And that's really how all of these activities benefit our company in having these great assets that are either authored by our teachers or focused on our teachers. We really address one of our buyers' primary challenges and concerns, which is the engagement of teachers in using the solution in their classroom. So that's how it goes.
Great.
Pretty much.
Thank you very much. So next, BT.
Thanks, Scott. Well, very similar to Rebecca, I think of community as sort of a power triad. The community is a social unit for the individual. It is also a social unit for a company, and it can also be a social unit for the community at large, sharing commonality where they engage in various ways. The community is engaging together because of sharing attitudes or interests or products or specific goals. And that community is sharing their knowledge and their information for betterment of everyone. Betterment of a person, betterment of themselves, betterment for their company. The person sharing is really feeding their soul as an educator or an influencer or a contributor or maybe seeking something specific, a certain status. Everyone is finding their own personalized benefit and value within a community. And if they're not, then they tend to move on and find a community that will feed their soul.
Mm.
Great, thank you very much. And Bill?
Such good comments to build on. So for me, a community and the working definition that I've developed over my practice and career is communities are networks of relationships, right? And they develop over time, and the stakeholders are generally the company, customers, prospects, and partners, right? Company, including employees. You often hear that the key ingredient to communities is a shared purpose. And I'd just like to offer a click down on that, which is really, communities are about realizing value collectively, right? And to do that, you have to, put some work in to understand ultimately what the stakeholder groups are trying to achieve and figure out via community management and different engagement techniques how to help everyone actualize or act on their purpose collectively. And that's where really the real power comes in. And I think the original question is what's the range of value? What do valuable interactions look like? And, between my practice at Structure 3C and working, firsthand with companies like Autodesk and Dell, while I was on staff, I've seen everything from, the sort of most accessible and initial jumping off point of peer-to-peer support to communities of practice forming around mastery and use of products and supporting different cohorts of customers in their career journeys, all the way to things like advocacy programs and innovation programs, including Dell's Idea Storm, which was our customer-led innovation program, where any customer could submit an idea and someone at Dell on the product team would actually consider it. And we actually brought approximately 600 ideas to market from that crowdsourcing community initiative. So there's such a wide range of value to be realized through communities. And I guess one thing I would say, and I don't mean to put too fine of a point on this, but I feel like communities are one of the most underutilized and unrealized sources of business value in the world today, full stop. And I'll elaborate on that as we go throughout the hour.
Great, thank you. I'll jump in too. So great information there. I'll share with you how we kind of frame it at HubSpot. So, we think of community, as Bill pointed out, is more than just community. I'm using the term customer engagement platform. And there's different aspects of customer engagement that are on the community platform, so such as user groups, such as advocacy programs, and soon all our webinars will run off of it. So that's kind of one framework. And then, in terms of figuring out what's beneficial, it's really important to understand when I worked on the Intuit community, we used to call it the jobs, or the tasks that people need to accomplish. And I put those in 3 buckets. Do they want to master, and this is from a technology company, do they want to master the product? And then do they want to master their craft? And then do they want to master their careers? And so the product obviously would be a HubSpot product. The craft would be if they're a marketer or if they're a salesperson. And then professional growth. We all want professional growth. And so that's another way of looking at it. And then I think the big thing too is that there's no silver bullet in this, so maybe you're like the great Oz behind the iron curtain, well, behind the curtain. And you have these different levers, whether you lean in on your champions, whether you lean in on the type of technology you use or type of content. So for example, there might be discussion threads, but we know it's more than discussion threads. There's a whole generation of TikTokers coming up, so you might lean more into video. So those are the kind of the ways we frame it at HubSpot and the ways, the different levers you have. So going to the next question. Should we, or should you incentivize your community should we incentivize community participation? With that, I will call to Bill first.
So incentives, thanks, Scott. Incentives go back to strategy. And if you think about what I said before about helping actualize purpose, which may sound very highfalutin and ethereal, but really it's about helping people make progress regularly and over time. That incentive comes in 2 forms: extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. And when you really nail that purpose component, really understand what your customers are trying to do and how community can help them do it better and faster by being part of a collective, you get that intrinsic motivation, right? With extrinsic motivation, you see things like techniques like gamification, which can be effective for certain activities in the short term, like customer onboarding into an activity. But where things start to get a little touchy is when you start to cross the streams with extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, meaning when you start to, say, financially reward customers for answering support questions, right? Because then you're starting to put a very specific value on an activity that really had more of a social capital value before. And so, that's where I would caution sort of the upper limits of reward. But, keep in mind, like a thank you, recognition, displaying certain dimensions of reputation within a community around accomplishments, badges for expertise, profiling customers or community members regularly in the community. Like all of these are sort of this range of vocabulary of value for your community. And it's taking the time to, create the strategy and figure out what value looks like in the context of your market, your company, and your community, and rewarding accordingly. I look forward to what everyone else has to say about this because it's such a rich topic.
No, that's great. BT?
Well, I'm going to underscore a lot of what Bill just said, that it is driven by what the person is incentivized by. Engagement should benefit the participant and the company. It should be both ways. And as a member, are you hoping to receive recognition through points or some kind of visible recognition award, or are you looking for advance notice of information about product launches or about anything that the organization is doing? Are you hoping that it will improve your communications? That a lot of people would be willing to join a community if they can improve their communications with your organization, get that advanced notification. Is it increasing the collaboration effort between your company and their company, or between your goals for your career and the company's goals? Special recognition, exclusive access to maybe by joining a community, you get access to certain tools or to a beta lineup of tools to certain sites. You get VIP treatment. I agree with Bill. I try to stay away from the monetary aspect and go with appealing to another level of reward and value that someone has.
That's great. Great answers there. Thank you very much. So we got our first question that came in. So I will segue over to that list versus our list. The first question is, where in the organization should community lie? Support or in marketing or someplace else? So I'll answer that first, and then I'll call on Bill maybe to help us out. So, and it's funny, when I was at Intuit, and this was, back in 2002, I was asked where community should be in the community. And I said, I'd like to change groups every 6 months, because I really believe that community is such a cross-functional sport that it's really hard to say, it should be anchored in support or anchored in marketing. A lot of companies started in support because obviously, or many often the tech question or the product question is the Trojan horse that gets people there, and then, they can go into broader topics. At HubSpot, we think of it actually, I'm going to be two-faced here. It's a little bit of a product as well. So it's in the product group as well as in the marketing group. So again, cross-functional. If you don't have the benefit of being in two different groups at once, I think it really depends on, Marketo. Marketo is a very marketing-driven company. I was at Marketo, so it was in the marketing group at first, and then went to the product group. HubSpot, they're another marketing-driven company, so it's in marketing. So really think about where the center of gravity is in the company. But if you have enough influence, think of it as a cross-functional activity, and so that it can reside anywhere. And one more last thing is the team that I manage and work with, there's people from multiple groups, like 6 different groups. I call them captains, and they own their domain, their area on the communities. So Ideation is a great example where the product team would own that. Bill, do you have anything to add?
I do. It's such a great question. So the challenge with having community in the support org, and no offense to anyone who's in the support org on the session today, but the benefit of having community in the support org is it's an easy business case to make, right? Because you can easily start to show customers are answering questions versus the split with employees, and you'll eventually if you follow the, natural path of these things, you'll eventually have some sort of MVP program where you'll see like, a very small group of customers are answering the majority of the support questions. But I've seen that go from like kind of a healthy and nice little business model to, hey, let's dump as much work as we possibly can on our customers, right? And it becomes a very toxic model and almost a liability, right? And so if you have to pick an org, I love seeing community in marketing, right? What I love even more is seeing more of a center of excellence model, or Scott, you said center, I think several times, but having a model where you centralize, at least for a while, the community functions and discussion to figure out where you can weave those types of interactions and those types of relationship building activities into the customer experience across all the org. And then maybe, over time, after you get the strategy figured out, you push those resources back to the sort of edges of the organization. I was very fortunate to be on Dell's Social Media Center of Excellence, where the first year, there were 15 director level folks who owned every aspect of community and social media and social commerce across the globe. We came together as a center for a year to figure out the strategy, to pilot programs. And then once we had a mature model, our boss, used this idea, Manish Mehta was his name, used this metaphor of breathing in and breathing out. So the center was breathing in, and then after the year, we breathed out, Dell breathed out, breathe, if that's past tense, I hope that is, into the edges of the organization. And the goal was to weave social media and community into the fabric of the company.
Great. One more question came in somewhat related to this, and we'll go back to questions we had. So how do you make that transition from support to marketing? And both at Intuit and Marketo, and now I'm doing it at HubSpot, is, part of it is lead by example, right? So when people go to the community, if they see everything support related, they're going to keep, only asking support related. So being transparent, one of the things we do at HubSpot is you remember those 3 buckets about mastering the product, mastering the discipline. There's more information on the site, whether it's from us or our champions or other people, that is related to the discipline of marketing, right? So if you lean in and ask the champions to help you out, or your all-stars, whatever you call them, they can start answering questions, providing blog information, seeding the community, whatever you want to call it, that's related to that discipline. And the aha will go off, in the customers who are saying, now I can learn, now I can ask questions related more to that broader topic. And for HubSpot, obviously we have a lot of marketing related content, so we can also use that as well. I don't know if anybody else on the team here has anything else to add to that before we go to the next question. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question here. What are some strategies to tie online communities to user groups, CABs, advocacy programs, etc.? How do you tie that all together? And with that, I will reach out to BT. Can you help us with this one?
Yes, a great question. I profile members. My favorite strategy is identifying their drivers and profiling their online personas, their drives. I have 4 basic questions I start off with profiling someone to calculate my strategy to tie someone into one or a different community that we may have set up. My first one is, how much time do they engage with the community they are currently in? If I calculate the average time spent with, if you can calculate the average time your members are spending in your community and profile who's engaged, who isn't. Sometimes you do this with badges, sometimes you do this with login hours, sometimes if we're meeting face to face, how long are they actually traveling to get to that meeting? So I calculate that. And then do they have online profiles Are they social? Are they writers or speakers? This identifies someone that they're pretty public and they're very engaged about a topic or about a product. And then I also profile how long have they been in their current position. And I do this because the Bureau of Labor Statistics says typical employees will stay in a job for about 4 years. And so if I see someone around the 3 to 4 year mark, I know that they are probably in a career mindset, that they want to make a move, they want to make an advancement. So I need to keep that in mind as part of that strategy in having them join a certain community. And then now I'm going to say something very controversial, so don't throw any vegetables at me. I also look at how old is the individual. Yes, age matters. Older employees are liable to stay longer in a position. And that kind of throws out the Bureau of Labor Statistics. If someone is 20, 30 something, they'll stay shorter in a job. If they're 50, 60 something, they'll stay longer in a job. Younger employees will have tend to have more innovative ideas. And that might be something needed in a certain community. So I'll make that invitation, and I'll look for older employees who have more experience. And I may need that in another committee, on a cab or some other area. And so because of those factors, that profiling, that's where I like to develop my strategies for integrating members of different communities.
Awesome. Bill, do you have anything to add to this?
Just that at the risk of saying something incredibly general, zooming up to look at the customer relationship first and foremost, and then thinking about where a community can integrate, I think is the way to go. And so often we back into it from every other way but that, right? So, especially with COVID and COVID restrictions in play, if you did have a cab that was meeting, BT, to your point, like obviously that can't happen anymore, at least in person. So, those things are happening online, and, there are likely ways to facilitate those conversations more regularly, via smaller group, digital settings, via video, and then maybe even with a Slack channel or some sort of community platform to keep the conversation going over time, right? So there, I think, are many integration points that are just sort of on the table right now because of COVID. I mean, I look at this like it's a horrible time generally in the world, but the one silver lining for us as community builders is we've never had, a more rich environment to experiment, mostly because, in a way we have to.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, I think, just on that, building on the last point, somebody was asking about how to move beyond support related questions. There's a lot going on in the world, right? And so part of your community content programming, so to speak, can be tied to what's going on in the world, right? So, I mean, if you have a global site, it might be a little bit different, but, holidays, like the team today, we can't, orange is our color. And so we're talking about Halloween. Now, it's a globe, we have 5 or 6 global sites that we manage. So we could only do that on the English or American site. So it's just something to think about what's going on in the world and how you can leverage that from a content programming perspective. Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. Next question is just reading questions here. What sort of benchmarks do you focus on and how do you evaluate success? And with that, Rebecca, I'm going to call to you first.
Great, thanks, Scott. Yeah, so aside from high engagement and the size of the community and at the rate that it's growing, it's fairly straightforward for me, which is essentially the number of assets and or activities that each member of the community does. So because we're very much focused on engaging them and participating in engaging and other educators, or which are new customers or prospective customers, in utilizing the same strategies that they use in the classroom. It's really just how frequently they do that, and or how many pieces of content that they help us create, because it just saves us time and resources, and it's great quality content. How much more PR coverage do we get around our customer success stories, because that's a real big piece of what's the popular type of news that we see in the trade journals for our market. And then finally, the biggest one though is what percentage of districts or schools that are rated red, yellow, or green, which is basically there are simple categorization for risk of renewal. How many of those districts or accounts with a high number of pros renew? And it's a correlation. And again, the program is new for us, but we are starting to see some impact there, where we've had some yellow districts turn green, etc., after an event. So that's it for us.
No, that's great. That's really helpful. So Amy has a question here. I should have called out the other people. I should have mentioned the other people who asked questions before, but Amy is on a roll here. So Amy would like to know, what do you use for community management? What type of tools? And she's interested in discussion boards with ideation. She's interested in showing presentations, and she's interested in eventually creating events. So with that, Bill, I'm going to call to you first.
Gosh, it's kind of a broad question. There are literally thousands of community and collaboration platforms out there. So it really, I mean, a good way to approach the question is like specifically what features do you need? And it looks like you've got a running list here. And then just, going out and doing the research, or feel free to ping me after this. I have a massive list as well. But, there's the traditional community and collaboration platforms. And after COVID, we're starting to see a lot of new and interesting form factors, like, lots more video and synchronous chat. You're seeing things like Clubhouse, which is like, basically voice only synchronous chat pop up. So it really is more about like ultimately what you're trying to accomplish than the tool set. I mean, I can't, as opposed to 20 years ago when we were first starting, now I honestly can't think of a use case that I could envision where I couldn't find a fairly robust tool off the shelf to use, right? So I'm not sure that was a super helpful answer, but there's literally a tool now for basically anything you can imagine.
Great, that's very helpful. Rebecca, would you like to add anything?
Sure. Yeah, because I did just recently go through that sort of vetting process with some of the popular ones, vanilla forums, Hive something, and I'll just share, we went with Forum B, which I can show you on my screen just quickly so you can see what that looks like. And we do it in tandem with a Facebook group page, only because I felt that there's so many places for people to go online now. And I know that I've become very selective about which tool I use to interact with and communicate with who. There's no professional people in my life on my Facebook friends, right? Those are anyway, you guys get where I'm going. So In the end, I did just go with Forum B, and this is what it looks like because it was very easy to use. It's extremely affordable, and it had, I think, most of those, like Bill just said, pretty much all of them offer a lot of the same things. You could do things that are much fancier looking, I think, than this, but it does give us, the opportunity to list events, host discussion boards. And also, this is where we where did they go? Well, this is where we also put our SLAP 5 prompts so that they're just kind of standing here for the community members to come and respond to and interact with right from here. And then we can actually post the videos here for them as well. So it was also nice because it integrated well with what we were doing with SLAP 5.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so from another Rebecca, gotta keep my Rebecca straight. Are your communities open, closed, something else? So I'll start with Bill on this. Bill?
Generally, unless it's a small privileged group, like a group of senior leaders or CEOs, every community I've ever built is open. We could talk about this for hours. I'll give one specific use case as an example of the why. So there was a time when a particular Autodesk product team wanted to restrict a forum to only product owners, like verified product owners. And we really pushed back against that without any data, to be honest. But we just felt like instinctively it was the wrong way to go, and it would really restrict the activity and what was happening there. One benefit we didn't anticipate, but which totally happened, was we started to get threads of, I'm considering Autodesk product X for this job. And this, keep in mind, this was like a $4,000 software package. And I'm comparing it to these two other packages. When that question hit the forums, everyone freaked, right? Because it's like, oh my God, they're talking about, purchase decision-making. Like, we've got to get on top of this. The amazing thing was the community rallied, right? Advocates that we didn't even know we had started to talk about everything they liked about the Autodesk product. And it was like this virtuous cycle of advocate activation because the forum was open and we allowed critical discussions of our products. And that kind of thing happens every day, all day on the Autodesk community today, right? So unless there's a really compelling reason, which would be around like the primary value of the community being exclusivity or the fact that you're selling it as a product, I typically err on the side of having them open.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, next question. Here's one I'm sure we've all thought about is, how do you think about your branded community versus having a Facebook group or Facebook page, right? So you have your own branded community, in our case would be HubSpot, and then also having a presence on Facebook or someplace else. With that, I'm going to call BT.
Hi, sorry about that. I was on mute. So I did want to address a little bit of what Bill was saying. Is he does mainly open. We tend to have both. We will have both open, so anyone can discuss anything and it's not heavily monitored, but we do have closed communities and access. And those are heavily monitored, and it's for a different purpose. So it all depends upon what your purpose is and what you should really think about. Do you want anybody of any title versus do you want to keep people grouped together with similarities? And I'm sorry, Scott, your question again, I was
Yeah, no
still
problem.
thinking about the previous question.
I'm a man of movement. So here you got your Facebook group. Here you've got your branded community. How do you
Yes.
think about the two and how they work together or not?
We keep them separate because of online community. Facebook is an open community for us, for a lot of our clients. And then we have more controlled private communities, people who own certain products, people who have certain partner levels, people who, whatever the situation. So no, we do not suggest blending, integrating a public Facebook community together with my product community, my cabs, my advocacy groups, that we keep them siloed and separate for that purpose.
So Dana jumped in and asked about LinkedIn. Would your answer be the same when it comes to LinkedIn groups, do you think?
That is an interesting question because we do have private and public on LinkedIn for many of our clients. I myself monitor a private group of influencers versus a public group of influencers on LinkedIn because of the people who are members there. So it is driven by a certain level of influence followers that I manage that. So again, I keep them separate.
Great. Rebecca, do you have anything to add?
Not very much, just that I basically chose to have two, and our Facebook group is the private community, whereas the online forum is public. You could flip it either way, but essentially just wanted to allow people to choose to engage as they would feel comfortable, and then hope that would increase the overall engagement. And that appears to have worked for us. So
Great. And Bill, the words of wisdom?
Just again, it goes back to, it really depends on what you're trying to do. It depends on if you're building a community destination after like your market has been habituated to using third-party communities or social media. I generally recommend an ecosystem-based approach. There's usually, when we create communities or help architect communities, there are usually, several touch points that feed into the branded community as a branded hosted community, as a mothership, if you will, or center of gravity. I think the last thing I would say is if you're building on social media, particularly on Facebook, you're essentially renting community versus ultimately owning and nurturing it, right? Like you have no idea what Zuckerberg and team are going to do next week. Right. So who knows, right? So that's the chance you take. And you have no idea if your customers are even seeing community messages on Facebook, if that's your primary, your primary touch point. So ecosystem approach is what I recommend.
I like that. Very helpful. Okay, so next question comes in from Joe. Why is it important to name and brand your community and all the programs that go with it? Like, how do you think about the naming of community as it relates to all your other programs, right? What could be an advocacy program, what could be a user group program. With that, BT, you want to go first or should I go first?
Okay, I'm going to grab the ball and run with it first. Personally, my opinion, yes. Brand your communities. You do not want your community to get confused with the brand of your company or your products. It's a totally different entity. I believe branding communities comes with its benefits. Each has its own equity and value and credibility. I happen to be a Hardly owner, and I'm Ladies of Harley. I'm a hog fan. And there's also SAP Community Network, which I think is one of the longest ones, SCN. Procter & Gamble has Being a Girl, Random House has Figment, and Lego fans, they call themselves Lugnet. So I am a big believer, and Ceridian has XOXO, Kisses and Hugs, for their advocacy program. So I am a big believer in brand your community.
No, that's great. I totally agree with that. I would add, so I think it's really important to have that kind of umbrella naming and positioning. One thing I would add too is that at Marketo, when I joined there, Marketo community just didn't cut it for me. So I think that, somebody else smarter than me came up with the term the marketing nation. And that did a few things. That created that emotional connection to Marketo. It also created this tribal aspect, kind of unifying everybody around, a common cause or a common theme. And so the Marketo Marketing Nation really accomplished that. So yes, as Nick just pointed out, they love the XOXO shout out. So I like that too. Although I always thought that was a beverage, alcohol, the XOXO. So it shows you where I come from. Also in terms of branding, Harley Davidson does just an incredible job, has an incredible community. So I would definitely think about that. So we have a few more minutes to go. I'm going to ask the panel three final things to address, and you can decide if you want to do 2 or 3 of them. So the first thing is kind of your final thoughts, the final takeaway. The second thing was a really interesting question from Amy is, I think she was asking like, what do you do about virtual happy hours? But since I'm trying to be a happy guy, how would you spend a virtual happy hour online? And then the last thing would be is just kind of a final statement about your company and where we can find your website or who you are. So just to summarize, final takeaway, something about virtual happy hour, and where we can find you guys. So with that, Rebecca, do you want to start first?
Sure. Let's see. I would say thoughts on virtual happy hour or online events. We have just seen such great success with the breakout rooms and making them interactive and allowing people really to talk and connect. I just find that in this moment in time, people are craving that deeply, much more so than the here we are, or this, what we're doing now, the panel discussion, very close, similar. But the breakout rooms, we've just been getting, and also you record those and you get great content that you can recycle into blog posts, etc. And then, what was the other one?
Final takeaway, virtual happy hour, and where can we find
you? Final words of wisdom. My final words of wisdom were that no matter how you go with where you start your initiative, marketing or support, etc., or having that center of excellence, I just really wanted to emphasize, especially if you're someone like me who's more of a one-person team, also bridging other job responsibilities and duties, having that committee and that cross-functional buy-in and awareness and support around your work is just a lifesaver, essential. I would just highly recommend it. It's the only thing that's really allowed my program to survive and thrive. And then, yes, please do find me on LinkedIn or at rebecca.salem@achieve3000.com. And I'm happy to chat and share more if you have questions. Thanks.
Your website is achieve3000.com. Your website, your community is.
Oh, and my website is, I'll put the community one in the chat because it's a little funny.
Perfect. Love it. Okay, BT, you're next.
In regards to online happy hours, love them, especially when they have a theme and they have a topic and you come prepared to share and talk about that or to experience that. We've got a Halloween happy hour happening tomorrow evening for our company, not for our clients at this point, but I'm headed to that, and I enjoy them, and I participate as much as I can. Final words of wisdom, I would say, engage your customer as early as possible. If you don't have a 360-degree pulse of your customers at this point, please get it, because when you are watching them respond, engage, noting that they had a very positive experience or shared information throughout their customer lifecycle about a positive experience, that's an opportunity that should not be wasted. Have them join one of your communities at that point while they're on the upbeat, the up pulse. And I can be reached at LinkedIn, Barbara Thomas at Yesler, a part of Accenture Interactive online.
That's great. And can you put your URL or community URL in the chat box?
Sure.
Share the wisdom. I just hope you don't do your virtual happy hours on your Harley Davidson motorcycle. Bill, any words here?
Well, I mean, you know me. When do I not have words? I have plenty of words. I have a funny hog story, Barbara, in that my wife was a victim of identity theft. We finally got it all worked out. Somebody bought a Harley in her name, but we are now hog members as well, although we didn't really buy it. So it was just a kind of a funny story. I would say, think about, especially for the marketers and sort of customer experience executives on the line, which I assume is most everybody, think about the increasing focus on the value of that one-to-one relationship, and then think about the exponential value that can be created when it's many to many, right? Like that's the power of community when done really well, right? And it can seem really overwhelming, but it's one of those things, like you start where you are, you do what you can, and you sort of learn and move forward over time. But I guarantee you, without exception, everyone has value on the table that they haven't tapped into through communities. As far as virtual happy hours, like any sort of novel way you can mix up customer interactions right now and customer connections, I think is generally a good thing. The barrier to entry is very low, and the risk is also very low. So experimenting with shared experiences, with customer happy hours, we've seen these really cool events where everyone does like a virtual wine tasting, and all have a bottle shipped, or a virtual chocolate tasting, things like that. Those shared experiences are invaluable and are building connective tissue that can be built in no other way right now. So, definitely a big fan of experimentation. And for me, you can find me online at structure3c, structure, the word, the number 3, the letter C.com. And I actually I'm offering my community strategy templates for free right now. So I've mentioned strategy a bazillion times. If you wanted to dig in and find out a little more, I'll drop the link to the templates in the chat. And yeah, just really appreciated being here today. Thank you, Scott and Rebecca and BT. Always awesome to hang out with you guys.
Okay, I'll say some final words too, but yeah, Bill definitely add stuff. There you go. He's fast today. I would love to combine virtual happy hour and the one takeaway, but I'm not that clever, and I don't want to drink and work at the same time. So I think the big thing for me is I've been at a few different companies, and only between us, one founder and CEO and guru has asked me, what are they saying on the community? It's really interesting. Like they always want to know the metrics. And what I mean is, what they're saying is, don't just look at the quantitative data, look at the qualitative data as well, and really see what people are saying and how they talk about your products, or how they talk about, the discipline they're in, whether it's marketing or something else. It's so rich with data. A quick story here is, once I was hired by Sony to market a device called the Dash, which you would put on, it actually was before the iPhone, you would put it on your night table, and you could like surf the internet. Well, they weren't selling a lot of them. So what I did is I started reading all the Amazon reviews, and it turned out that most of the people who were writing reviews were using them to search for recipes and to use them as recipes. And so they repositioned the product as something you could put in the kitchen. There's no way any data would have shown me that. There's no way that, I would have like just looked at the community, looked at the product, or looked at the community and figured it out. I had to actually read these Amazon reviews. Well, you can read what's on the community, I take that back. But I had to read the Amazon reviews. So I say not just community, but any source that you have where you can look at qualitative information is going to be extremely valuable. So it's unusual, but we're going to finish 4 minutes early here. So I want to thank Rebecca. I want to thank Bill and BT. I learned a lot today. I hope you guys did too. You can see all our contact information there on the right-hand side. I will add mine in a few minutes, but you can always find me somewhere in HubSpot world. So I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank Slap5 for inviting us, and I want to thank the individuals who asked so many great questions. So thanks again. It's Wednesday, so happy Wednesday and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you.
Right. And let's have a little virtual applause for our session leaders today. Thank you, folks. Great session. Thank you so much for getting into so many of the questions and letting people ask so many questions on the session too. I don't know about you guys, but I already started my happy hour. So bar is open, but seriously, what do you guys think? Should we do a virtual happy hour following one of our days of sessions this week? Halloween themed, where we all wear a costume? BT will be into it, right? You're muted, BT.
I've already got one that I have to attend.
All right, well, we'll do it right before so you can go right from one to the other. Okay. All right, well, yes, and so thank you, panel. Thank you for this is such an important topic, and you illuminated so many of the things that people there's a lot of misunderstandings about communities. You really gave us a flavor, and I love so much what I took away from it. It's so much about the personal connection that you're creating and what it means to people to have that personal connection. And actually, if you guys don't mind, since we do have literally 2 minutes left before the clock ticks 3:20 Eastern time, what is one piece of advice you would give for the CustomerX community to take this to the next level, to really, because we're asking, first of all, let me just say, we're asking all the members, because this is very much a crowdsourced community. It's member driven. Even this conference was entirely designed by members. But beyond finding out what they want, as community experts, what would you say? Because this is an industry practitioner community for people in CustomerX roles.
Can I start off?
Go ahead, BT.
If you're not leveraging AI, if you're not leveraging technology for the content that's shared inside your community, you're missing out on a lot of value that you and your company can gain from your community. All of that content, just leveraging AI can help you see things that you don't automatically originally see with the comments. So I say use AI.
All right. Anybody else have any thoughts there?
Just from a conference perspective, I mean, this has been amazing. One thing to throw out there, if you want to go truly, although it's scary, but truly crowdsourced, is look at the open space model and potentially add a unconference segment at the end. Could be a potential idea for a future event. That would be my wild card suggestion.
All right. Well, we're actually doing what's similar to an unconference on the last day, next Monday. We're going to be having people nominate topics and then do breakout rooms around those topics, kind of the birds of a feather session.
Perfect.
We're calling them the cohorts. But I assume, is that similar to what you were thinking, Bill?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. So you're one step ahead.
And then just to BT's point, one thing I want to mention is we're going to be announcing next Monday, I'm giving you guys a preview, CustomerX Labs. And what CustomerX Labs is going to be looking into is, as we are the keepers and collectors of this amazing customer insight and customer voice, how do we then use AI and machine learning to get even more meaning from that and then infuse it into our companies? And so that's going to be sort of an exploration initiative that we're going to do, that I'm going to get volunteers to sign up and join us on that mission.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. So I just joined HubSpot about 2.5 months ago, and I didn't know what I didn't know. So we created the lab.
Yep.
And every week, every Monday, there's a question or some wireframes or something we share with the folks. And for the first 10 weeks, we were asking. I'll get to that. But this past week, we decided to give back in there and share a theme that called, what does it mean to be a T-shaped marketer, which you should all Google. I highly recommend that. I can answer that if you want in a second. But I think the key thing is, like, there's something new every week. It's crowdsourced. So they actually let, we're going through a redesign process. It's going to be a rollout process versus a one and done and then refine. So it's kind of taking an agile approach to it. But all the pieces and all the prioritization is coming from the community itself.
Very cool. Very cool. And Rebecca, you're on mute, but did you have any key thoughts on where this community goes from your community expert point of view?
I don't know if this is exactly the answer to your question, but I will say that bringing any of your online virtual community to a live in-person event or being able to translate it, I think that really has brought it to another level for us. The online engagement only gets better, and I think that the value to your community members increases a lot too, because again, they just get to build even deeper relationships.
Right. Yeah, that's such a great point. This was supposed to be an in-person event, as you all know. We've had to go virtual. I know everybody's chomping at the bit to get in person again, and I do have to do a shout outs for people like Evan Jacobs and Erwin Hipsman. I mean, these were people who really urged me when I was just floating the idea out there about taking our group therapy for customer marketers session into the conference world. They were like, absolutely, you have to do it. You have to do it. And it has to be a full day or at least, and we have to get out of our office. And so I can't wait to make it virtual. I mean, to go back from virtual to in-person. But I do see, if you guys agree, I'm seeing a lot of my clients are telling me that there's some things that they're doing virtually that they're going to keep doing virtually even after we go back to being able to do things in person, because they complement each other so nicely. And I think that's what you're saying, Rebecca, right? Is that they feed each other. And
yeah. 100%.
All right. Well, with that, why don't we wrap it up? Thank you so much for this great expert session. So with that, let's just say have a great rest of your day. It's happy hour in Boston, and hopefully where you are, you only have a few more hours left before your happy hour.